Different focal lengths have unique visual languages that communicate different feelings in your images. And depending on your style, one may be better suited for you over another. Today, we'll be discussing what's arguably the most dynamic street photography focal length, 28mm. This is a focal length that I've used more often over the last couple of years, and I can definitely say that it's one that I love to create with. To keep things concise, we'll discuss it across three different categories: perspective, style, and versatility. 28mm is on the wide end of the typical range that people recommend for street photography, and because of its nature as a wider focal length, it's going to have certain characteristics. You gain a lot of valuable context, even in the moments where you're on narrow streets or in those tighter environments. In that, the ability to capture the essence of everything going on comes very naturally. This is where 28mm shines, because when it comes to that storytelling equation of subject plus environment, it's almost hardwired into its perspective. It's amazing when you bring everything together, and since you have access to more complete sets of information, you can end off with some truly special images. Now, when it comes to the moments that you're closer to your subject, that proximity can serve to highlight their expressions, style, emotion, etc. This is where I feel the "if your photos aren't good enough, you aren't close enough" quote comes from. Though I don't agree that simply getting closer to something or someone makes for a better picture, there's definitely situations where you can amplify a feeling by doing so. This same proximity can create unique ways of presenting things that we see every single day. But at the very least, the 28mm focal length, when close to a subject and composed well, can create a feeling that simply makes the viewer feel like they were there with you. It's a beautiful thing, and a powerful one at that. Just as truly, having some distance between you and your subject provides a great way of displaying a sense of scale, environmental storytelling, and higher levels of composition. For example, with this image right here, due to the nature of 28mm and the powerful line created by the perspective, I made for a strong leading line that sends your eyes along the flow of people walking down the street. Or take this one here at the Solstice Steps in Lakewood, where we have a couple talking together and behind them, a kid who had just gotten off of his bike. Because of 28's properties as a wider focal length, I implemented the layering technique, which is the concept of separating a photograph into multiple grounds. In that, we now have multiple stories going on all at once. It's a little bit of a visual treat, and it keeps your viewers looking at a photo a little bit longer. And lastly, take this image here at a street corner with a food stand. Young man right here in the retro 5s kicks off the composition, and the V shape of the cement sends your eyes through the rest of the composition. The prominent reds act not only as visual resets, but almost like a compass of connecting dots, since it's the most prominent color. Now, due to how close I was, the properties of layering, and the sheer perspective of 28mm, this same image wouldn't have been possible with an 85mm lens. I'd be too far, then the angle would have been off, subjects would have been cut off. It's just not happening. Also, the compression of longer focal lengths would have restricted the frame as well. Probably wouldn't have even been able to do this with a 50mm lens. And that's totally okay, because each focal length has its own properties. 28mm has unique characteristics that allow for unique perspectives. All of this leads directly into style. Now, I believe that style is something that finds you. It takes a lot of photography and hours of reflecting on your catalog to uncover what compels you to photograph. And while this is somewhat true for all focal lengths, I love that 28mm doesn't force you to be a certain kind of photographer. Let's look at how some different photographers utilize the 28mm focal length. My good friend Rosa, who you may have seen on YouTube, is somebody whose catalog explores the more documentary aspect of where he lives, never shying away from the empty spaces either. He's always doing an excellent job of capturing what makes his city what it is and capturing the essence of the people. He balances proximity and storytelling very well, never getting close just for the sake of being close. There's always a reason, and that's something that I really appreciate about his catalog. My good friend Lee is an absolute wizard when it comes to talking to people. I've witnessed him firsthand make absolute strangers of all ages and backgrounds open up and tell their life stories within 5 minutes. It's ridiculous. And I think his photos are very warm because of that. This is somebody who I'd absolutely describe as a humanist photographer. And then when it comes to my work, which I've been showing all up to this point, I definitely like to approach scenes in their entirety for the most part. It's not often that I use 28 with 100% emphasis on only the human subject. It's usually in relation to the environment, more so the beauty and aesthetics route. 3 different people, 3 different ways of using the focal length. I say all of this to say, don't feel like you have to buy a 28mm lens and immediately start getting 3 inches away from people. Also, don't feel like you can't still be in the early stages of developing your style while using this lens. This is a focal length that you can grow with, and since it's so varied in the ways that you can use it, you can be on that journey with your style as you're figuring out what resonates with you. I implore you to explore all the different dynamics of composition that you may find with this focal length, but do not be in a rush at all to define your style. It'll come in due time. The last quality we'll discuss that makes 28mm shine is its sheer versatility. Plus skill and proximity, 28 opens the doors to images that speak out to the viewer, for a feeling that's almost like they were there on your shoulder as it happened, and it makes for a uniquely empathetic way of relating to an image. The sense of depth, the emotion shifting through the frame into the real world, it's perfect for a humanistic approach. 28mm plus distance and careful attention allows for images that incorporate all aspects of visual design and allow you to piece together frames that are a joy for yourself and the viewer. There are street portraits, which are perfect for the environmental scenes of groups of friends, families, and people at play that give insight into what a day was like during your time. And last but certainly not least, we can't forget to be the authors of our own lives. 28mm truly might be the perfect focal length for everyday life. The context, the feeling it gives, the fact that most camera systems have a compact 28mm option, there might be nothing better for capturing the stories and scenes of the big and little moments. Of course, versatility in application heavily depends on the photographer, but 50mm is too tight for my apartment. Sometimes even 35mm is for certain indoor spaces. 28mm is not a cakewalk to learn, but when you get the hang of it, I'd go as far as to say that in street, documentary, and daily life settings, it just might be a jack of all trades and a master of all of them. With that all being said, thank you for watching. I've done videos like this for both 35 and 40mm now, with one planned for 50 in the near future. But what's really crazy is that after writing this out, thinking about it, and talking about it with you, I think I just realized that 28 might be my favorite focal length. I don't know. Regardless, my name is Dorian Coleman, and thank you for watching.